Hello, friends and explorers in pursuit of the great miracles that changed the course of history. Today, we will focus on the life of Prophet Moses, from the waters of the Nile River to Pharaoh's palace and then to freedom. The epic tale of a challenging journey that began in a basket and culminated in becoming the savior of a people. From the burning bush on Mount Sinai to the mighty waves of the Red Sea shows us the victory of justice over oppression. I wonder what aspect of this life story impacts you the most. Let's discuss in the comments. Long, long ago, in the land of Egypt, there ruled a powerful king, a pharaoh. Now, this wasn't just any king. He was arrogant, ruthless, and claimed that he was a god. Yep, you heard that right. He actually told people, "I am your Lord, the Most High." Bold, huh? Under his rule lived a group of people called Bani Israel, the children of Israel. They were a community descended from Prophet Jacob, peace be upon him. But life wasn't easy for them. In fact, it was terribly hard. The Pharaoh hated them. He feared their growing numbers, believing one day they might rise against him. So what did he do? He enslaved them, forced them into labor, and treated them cry. And just when you think it couldn't get worse, it did. One day, Pharaoh's advisors came to him with disturbing news. They claimed that according to a prophecy, a boy would be born among Bani Israel who would one day defeat Pharaoh and overthrow his kingdom. Now, Pharaoh, being the paranoid tyrant that he was, made a horrifying decision. He ordered that every baby boy born to Bani Israel should be killed. Imagine the terror in every home. Mothers clutching their newborns, fathers fearing every knock on the door. This was the world Musa was about to be born into. In the midst of this dark and fearful time, a woman from Bani Israel gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. His mother loved him deeply, and when she looked into his tiny face, her heart both filled with joy and fear. She knew the soldiers could come at any moment. But here's where Allah's mercy shines brightest in dark moments. Allah inspired her heart with calm and a plan. She was told to place her precious baby in a small basket and set him afloat on the waters of the Nile River. It sounds risky, doesn't it? But sometimes trusting Allah means letting go in the most uncertain situations. And so, with trembling hands and tearful eyes, she placed her baby in the basket, kissed his tiny forehead, and let the river carry him. Now, you might think a baby floating down a river in a basket would be a tragic story, but not this time. That little basket bobbed along the water, passing reeds and branches under the watchful gaze of the angels. And guess where it landed? At the royal palace, the very home of Pharaoh himself. Pharaoh's wife, known as Aska, was a woman of deep faith and gentle heart. When she saw the baby, she immediately fell in love with him. She begged Pharaoh, "Do not kill him. Perhaps he may benefit us, or we may adopt him as a son." Pharaoh, seeing how much his wife cared, agreed. And so this little baby boy, born into fear, became a child of the palace. They named him Musa. But here's the beautiful part. Even though Musa, was now in the palace of the enemy, Allah had a plan, one that no tyrant could ever stop. And so Musa grew up surrounded by wealth, comfort, and status. but his heart remained pure. He was different from the other palace dwellers. There was something special about him. A kindness, a courage, and a sense of justice that would one day shake the foundations of Pharaoh's kingdom. But for now, he was a child with a story unlike any other. The Egypt of that time wasn't the Egypt you might imagine from travel books or glossy postcards. It was a land ruled by a king whose arrogance had no limits. Pharaoh wasn't just a ruler. He claimed to be a god. Everywhere you looked, his statues towered over the city streets. His name was engraved on the walls, his symbols stamped on every coin, and his word was law. But for one community, life was far from grand. Bani Israel. The children of Israel lived as slaves. They built the grand palaces, the towering temples, and worked from sunrise to sunset under the scorching Egyptian sun. And if one of them fell from exhaustion, another would be dragged in to replace him. Their backs were bruised, their hearts heavy, and still Pharaoh feared them. See, Pharaoh wasn't just cruel for the sake of it. He was afraid. Yes, the most powerful man in Egypt, surrounded by guards and walls of gold, was terrified of these humble people. Why? Because of a prophecy. Some wise man, or maybe a dream he'd had, warned that one day a boy from Bani Israel would rise and overthrow him. Pharaoh could tolerate many things, but the idea of losing his throne, never. So, he did what tyrants often do when they're scared. He lashed out. And that's when Pharaoh made one of the darkest decisions in history. He ordered that every newborn boy from Bani Israel be killed. His soldiers roamed the streets, entering homes without warning, tearing newborns from their mothers' arms. The wails of grieving parents filled the nights. The fear in the hearts of mothers, wondering if their turn was next, was constant. It's hard to imagine, isn't it? A world where the birth of a baby isn't a joy but a danger. But even in those terrifying nights, faith remained. Some whispered to each other, "Surely Allah hears us. Surely a Savior will come." And little did they know that Savior was already here. While Pharaoh's men searched every home and corner of the city, a tiny basket floated quietly down the Nile River. Inside it lay a child destined to face Pharaoh, split seas and lead a nation. That child was Musa AFS, and as that small basket drifted with the current, it passed soldiers, reeds, and riverbanks. Not a soul noticed, because when Allah wills something, even the strongest army can't stop it. Back in the city, Bani Israel's suffering didn't end. Those who survived Pharaoh's terror worked endlessly. They built with their hands what they would never live in. They harvested crops they could never taste. They raised the Pharaoh cities, yet slept in broken homes. But something was beginning to stir. Whispers spread among them about a child that by Allah's mercy had escaped the soldiers, a child whose fate would one day bring them freedom. Hope is a powerful thing, my friend. Even when crushed 100 times, it finds a way to bloom. You might wonder, why would Allah allow such injustice to go on? Why let Pharaoh rise so high? Why innocent people suffer for so long? Because in every hardship there's wisdom. In every trial there's growth. Sometimes the darkest night gives birth to the brightest dawn. And sometimes the strongest people are shaped by the harshest winds. Bonnie, Israel was being prepared for a leader, for a miracle, and for a journey that would be remembered for all time. The city of Egypt was silent. The streets lay still, and even the palace guards, fierce and proud by day, grew tired by night. In one tiny corner of the city, in a modest home, a woman sat alone, holding her newborn baby close. She was a woman from Bonnie, Israel, part of people oppressed by Pharaoh. Her name was not mentioned clearly in the Quran, but scholars tell us she was called Yuk, and in her trembling arms was her baby boy, a boy whose arrival was both a blessing and a danger. You see, Pharaoh's cruel law was still in place. Every male baby born to Bonnie Israel had to be killed, and no house was safe. Eucabid's heart raced every time a soldier passed by her door. She knew they could knock at any moment, demand to see the child, and do the unthinkable. But even in her fear, she felt something strange, a sense of peace. As if a gentle voice whispered in her heart, "Trust in Allah." Then came a moment of divine inspiration. Allah spoke to her heart, telling her to do something unimaginable. Nurse him for a while, but when you fear for him, place him in the river, and do not be afraid, nor grieve. Indeed, we shall return him to you, and make him one of the messengers. Quran 28 banding 7. Can you imagine, my friend, being told to place your precious newborn into a river, alone in a basket? Most would panic, refuse, or break down in tears. But Eucabid's faith was strong. She knew Allah's plan was greater than her fears. By night, she carefully crafted a small basket, making sure no water would seep through. She placed soft cloth inside and gently laid her baby down. Her hands trembled, but her heart held steady with a final kiss on his forehead and silent prayers. She carried the basket to the Nile River. The stars shimmered above. The water whispered softly against the shore, and with one deep breath, she set the basket afloat. Her heart broke as she watched it drift away, but in that heartbreak, faith glowed brighter as the basket disappeared into the dark waters. Eucabid turned her face to the sky. She prayed, not with loud words, but with a heart full of hope. "O Allah, protect him. Keep him safe. Return him to me if you will, and let him fulfill whatever you have destined." And though no one else heard her, Allah did. The basket floated peacefully, carried by the gentle current. It passed reeds and branches, dodged stones, and glided under moonlit skies. Birds sleeping on branches, fish swimming below. All were witnesses to this quiet miracle, and so it made its way to the grand palace of Pharaoh himself. At dawn, one of Pharaoh's household came to the riverbank, perhaps to fetch water or take a morning walk. They spotted the tiny basket, curious about what could be inside. When they opened it, a tiny baby lay there, his small hand curled, his eyes softly closed. The one who found him immediately called for Asha, the wife of Pharaoh. Now Ashia was no ordinary woman. Though married to a tyrant, her heart was pure. She believed in one God and secretly rejected her husband's arrogance. When she saw the baby, something inside her lit up. She fell in love with him instantly. She held him gently and rushed to Pharaoh. "Do not kill him," she begged. Perhaps he may be of benefit to us, or we may adopt him as a son. Pharaoh, perhaps uninterested in one helpless child, agreed. And so Musa, as a child born to a persecuted people, became a child of the palace. Meanwhile, Euclid's heart ached. Her arms felt empty. And though she trusted Allah, the pain of separation cut deep. But Allah in His wisdom didn't let her suffer for long. The baby refused to nurse from anyone in the palace. No matter how many women they brought, the child would turn away crying. Then, by Allah's will, the palace servants found a woman nearby, none other than Eucab herself. She was brought to the palace, and when she held the baby, his crying stopped. He clung to her as if he knew. And so, without them knowing, Pharaoh's own palace paid the child's mother to nurse and care for her own son. Allah kept His promise. So, there he was. The same little boy who had floated helplessly down the river in a tiny basket was now inside one of the grandest palaces in the world. Walls made of shining stone, towering statues of Pharaoh, fountains sparkling in the sunlight. This was no ordinary home. It was a place of power, wealth, and fear. But even with all its glitter and gold, something about Musa has stood out. He wasn't like the other children of the palace. While others played carelessly, Musa's heart often drifted to the workers outside the palace walls. The ones who built those giant statues carried stones on their backs and sweated under the hot Egyptian sun. Though he didn't fully understand yet, his soul felt their pain. Even as a child, Musa showed signs of great courage. He wasn't afraid to speak his mind. When something felt wrong, his small voice would question it, and people noticed. Some of the palace servants whispered to one another, "There's something special about that boy. He's different." Even Asha, the kind-hearted wife of Pharaoh, saw it. She loved Musa as her own, protecting him from the cruelty of palace politics and keeping him close. And while Pharaoh had forgotten the old prophecy of a boy rising from Boni, Israel, little did he know that the very child he had allowed into his home would one day challenge him. As the years passed, Musa grew stronger, taller, and wiser. Sometimes, late at night, he would slip away to the palace gardens. There, under the moonlight, he would listen to the soft rustle of palm leaves and the distant murmur of the Nile. He felt at peace in those quiet moments. And perhaps, though he didn't yet realize it, Allah was preparing his heart for what lay ahead. One day, as Musa wandered near the edge of the palace grounds, he saw something that made his blood boil. An Egyptian guard was mercilessly beating a man from Boni, Israel. The poor man was weak, barely able to defend himself. The guard's shouts were harsh and his strikes cruel. Something inside Musa stirred, a fire of justice. He couldn't stand by and watch. Without thinking much, Musa rushed to help. He struck the Egyptian, trying to protect the weak man. But what happened next shocked even Musa. The guard collapsed lifeless. It was an accident. A single blow, delivered with the strength Allah had blessed him with, into the man's life. Musa immediately felt a wave of regret and fear. "This is from the work of Satan," he whispered to himself. "He is a clear enemy, one who misleads openly." His heart pounded. He knew if word reached Pharaoh, his life would be in danger. In that terrifying moment, Musa, as did what all believers do when overwhelmed, he turned to Allah. He raised his hands and prayed, "My Lord, I have wronged myself, so forgive me," and Allah, in his endless mercy, forgave him. But now there was no time or waste. Musa, as had to be careful. The city's whispers were growing louder. Word of the incident was spreading. The next day, as Musa walked through the streets, a man hurried towards him. He was one of Pharaoh's advisors, a believer in secret. He leaned in and whispered, "Musa, the chiefs are planning to kill you. Leave the city at once. I'm only telling you this because I care for you." And just like that, Musa's life changed forever. Musa has left the only home he'd ever known. No grand farewell, no park belongings, no wise. He slipped quietly through the city gates, heading towards the vast open desert. His heart was heavy with fear, but also with hope. He didn't know what lay ahead. Where'd he find shelter? Would Pharaoh's men chase him? Would he survive the unforgiving wilderness? But one thing Musa did know, Allah was with him. And sometimes when you have nothing but Allah, you have everything you need. The day began like any other in Egypt. The sun climbed high above the towering palace walls. The city streets were alive, with merchants shouting prices, children chasing each other, and laborers hauling heavy stones under the watchful eyes of soldiers. Musa, as now a strong and capable young man, walked among them. Though he lived in the palace, his heart was never far from the people, especially the oppressed from Bani Israel. He often passed by quietly, observing the injustices they faced. He saw their exhaustion, their fear, and their silent prayers. But on this day, something different was about to happen. As Musa moved through a narrow street, he suddenly heard a desperate cry, "Help me, someone, please." He turned quickly and saw two men quarreling. One was from Bani Israel, a poor worker, bruised and weak. The other was an Egyptian guard, powerful, well-fed, and cruel. The Egyptian was beating the man mercilessly, his shouts sharp and angry. Musa's heart tightened. He couldn't bear to see such injustice, and before he could stop himself, he rushed toward them. In a moment of instinct and fury, Musa struck the Egyptian. It was a single blow. One strike meant to stop the cruelty, but the guard collapsed instantly. Silence fell over the alley. The man from Bani Israel gasped. Musa stood frozen, the reality of what just happened crashing down on him. The Egyptian was dead. Musa immediately felt the weight of what he had done. He didn't intend to kill the man, only to defend the weak. But now a life had been lost. He whispered to himself, "This is from the work of Shaitan. Indeed, he is a clear, misleading enemy." His heart raced. He looked around. Would someone come? Had anyone seen him? The streets remained eerily quiet. Overwhelmed with guilt, Musa turned to the only one who could forgive him. He raised his hands and prayed, "My Lord, indeed I have wronged myself, so forgive me." And in his infinite mercy, Allah forgave him. Even the greatest of people can slip. But what matters is turning back to Allah sincerely and humbly. And that's exactly what Musa as did by morning. Word of the Egyptian's death had spread. Whispers filled the markets and streets. Who killed the soldier? Did you hear? Someone struck him dead with a single blow. People speculated. Some guessed it was a Bani Israel man. Others suspected a palace insider. The walls of the city seemed to have ears. And though no one had seen Musa, as danger crept closer, the next day, as Musa as walked cautiously through the city, hoping the matter would settle, he saw the same man from Bani Israel again. And guess what? He was in another fight. This time with a different Egyptian again. Musa as thought. The man called out to Musa, "Help me, Musa." But this time Musa hesitated. He scolded him, saying, "Indeed, you're a clear troublemaker." Even Musa has realized that standing for justice was important, but some people find themselves in constant conflict, not always wisely, and unfortunately for Musa, as someone overheard him. An Egyptian man rushed to Pharaoh's court, revealing what he had witnessed and claiming that Musa was responsible for the soldier's death. Pharaoh's advisors, already uneasy about Musa's growing strength and popularity, saw an opportunity. Seize him. They advised Pharaoh, "He's a threat to your rule." A decision was made. Musa as was to be killed. But Allah had placed a believer within Pharaoh's court, a man whose heart remained faithful to the one God, though he kept his faith hidden. When he learned of the plot against Musa, he rushed to find him. Out of breath, he found Musa as and warned him, "Musa, the chiefs are plotting to kill you. Leave the city immediately. I tell you this because I care for you." And with those words, Musa's as life inside Egypt came to an end. Without time to gather belongings or even say farewell, Musa has left the city. He moved quickly, quietly. The sun began to set behind him as he entered the endless open desert. He was alone, but not truly, because Musa as carried something with him that no army or fortress could match. The protection and mercy of Allah. Imagine Musa as walking quickly out of the gates of Egypt. The sun was beginning to set. The streets, once loud with voices and market cries, were growing quiet. Every step Musa took pulled him farther from the only home he'd ever known. Behind him lay danger and death. Ahead of him, endless desert. But sometimes leaving behind what harms you is the first step toward finding what heals you. The road to Madden was long and unforgiving. Days stretched on. The sun blazed overhead by day, and the desert chilled to ice at night. Musa has had no caravan, no supplies, no food, no water. He walked alone, his feet aching, his stomach empty, but his heart filled with trust. And even when his strength faded, his faith remained. "My Lord, guide me to the right way," he would whisper. And unfortunately for Musa, as someone overheard him, an Egyptian man rushed to Pharaoh's court, revealing what he had witnessed and claiming that Musa was responsible for the soldiers' death. Pharaoh's advisors, already uneasy about Musa's growing strength and popularity, saw an opportunity. Seize him. They advised Pharaoh, "He's a threat to your rule." A decision was made. Musa as was to be killed. But Allah had placed a believer within Pharaoh's court, a man whose heart remained faithful to the one God, though he kept his faith hidden. When he learned of the plot against Musa, he rushed to find him. Out of breath, he found Musa, as and warned him. "Musa, the chiefs are plotting to kill you. Leave the city immediately. I tell you this because I care for you." And with those words, Musa's life inside Egypt came to an end. Without time to gather belongings or even say farewell, Musa has left the city. He moved quickly, quietly. The sun began to set behind him as he entered the endless open desert. He was alone, but not truly, because Musa has carried something with him that no army or fortress could match: the protection and mercy of Allah. Imagine Musa as walking quickly out of the gates of Egypt. The sun was beginning to set. The streets, once loud with voices and market cries, were growing quiet. Every step Musa took pulled him farther from the only home he'd ever known. Behind him lay danger and death. Ahead of him, endless desert. But sometimes leaving behind what harms you is the first step toward finding what heals you. The road to Madden was long and unforgiving. Days stretched on. The sun blazed overhead by day, and the desert chilled to ice at night. Musa has had no caravan, no supplies, no food, no water. He walked alone, his feet aching, his stomach empty, but his heart filled with trust. And even when his strength faded, his faith remained. "My Lord, guide me to the right way," he would whisper. In times like this, when you have nothing else, you realize the only true companion is Allah. Even in the vast emptiness, Allah's mercy appeared, a passing cloud to shade him, a small tree to rest under, a tiny spring for a sip of water. Little moments unnoticed by most, but precious gifts for a weary traveler. It's a reminder, my friend. Sometimes the smallest blessings are the ones that save us. After many long days and nights, Musa has finally reached the land of Maiden. It was a peaceful place, a town surrounded by hills and scattered palm trees. At the town's edge was a large well where people gathered to water their animals. Musa, as exhausted and thirsty, approached quietly. There he noticed a group of shepherds, strong men pulling water for their flocks. And off to the side, standing apart from the crowd, were two young women. They held their sheep back, waiting patiently for the others to finish. Musa has watched them for a moment. In this time and place, it wasn't common for women to work like this alone, and it wasn't hard to see they were struggling. He approached them kindly and asked, "What's the matter with you two?" They replied softly, "We do not water our animals until the shepherds leave, and our father is an old man." Musa, as despite being tired, hungry, and a stranger, immediately offered his help. That's the heart of a prophet. Even in hardship, kindness remains. Musa has walked over to the well, and though the other men had already drawn water and moved on, the well's heavy stone cover remained. With a single strong motion, Musa lifted the stone and drew water for the two women's flocks. No showing off, no demons, just sincere help. The women thanked him and hurried home to their father. Musa, as now completely drained, found a bit of shade under a tree, and as the wind rustled the leaves above him, he made a heartfelt prayer. He whispered, "My Lord, indeed I am. For whatever good you would send down to me in desperate need." Quran, 28 minutes and 24 seconds. It wasn't a loud, fancy prayer. It was quiet, simple, and full of sincerity. And as we'll soon see, Allah always answers those prayers made from a heart that truly believes. After Musa helped the two young women water their flocks, they rushed home to their father. Their hearts were light. They told them about the kind, strong stranger who helped them without asking for anything in return. Their father, a wise and righteous man known in Islamic tradition as Prophet Shu'ab, listened carefully. And then he did something beautiful. He told one of his daughters, "Go and invite him. Bring him here. Let's offer him some food and hear his story." You see, kindness recognizes kindness and goodness calls to goodness. The young woman made her way back to the well. Musa, was still there, resting under the tree, his eyes heavy with fatigue. She approached him respectfully and said, "My father invites you so that he may reward you for watering our flocks." Musa, as though weary, stood up. Not because he expected a reward, but because something about the invitation felt safe. It felt guided, and so he followed her through the peaceful streets of Maidan toward a home filled with warmth and faith. Inside, the old man welcomed Musa as with open arms. They sat together, and Shu'ab offered him food, a simple, humble meal. But before they ate, Shu'ab asked, "Young man, tell me your story. Who are you? What brings you here, alone and weary?" And so Musa spoke. He told him about Egypt, about Pharaoh's cruelty, about the terrible incident that forced him to flee, about his long journey through the desert, guided only by faith. The house fell silent, listening to every word, and when Musa finished, Shu'ab smiled gently and said, "Do not fear. You have escaped the wrongdoing, people." In that moment, Musa felt safe for the first time in a long while. As the days passed, Musa remained in Maidan. He helped around the household, cared for the animals, and brought peace to his own heart. And then one of Shu'ab's daughters, the same one who had invited him, spoke to her father. She said, "Oh my father, hire him. Indeed, the best one you can hire is the strong and trustworthy." Quran 28:26. She had seen Musa's strength at the well and his honesty in conversation, and her words carried wisdom. Shu'ab agreed. He approached Musa with a kind offer. Shu'ab said, "I wish to marry you to one of my two daughters, on the condition that you work for me for 8 years. But if you complete 10, it will be from your generosity, and I do not wish to make things difficult for you." Quran 28:27. Musa accepted happily. After all, he had no home, no family nearby, and here was a chance for peace, stability, and belonging. And so a simple, blessed marriage was arranged. No grand feast, no towering palace, just hearts united in faith and sincerity. For the next several years, Musa worked diligently. He tended to the flocks, helped round the house, and found joy in simple things. He learned the ways of the land, how to guide the sheep through valleys, how to find water in dry lands, and how to live peacefully away from the cruelty of Pharaoh. Life wasn't luxurious, but it was rich in peace. And sometimes that's the kind of wealth people forget to ask for. During these years, Musa has had time to reflect. He thought about the life he had left behind, the towering palace walls, the glitter of Egypt's riches, the endless fear, and he realized something important. True peace doesn't come from gold or power. It comes from knowing who you are, serving your Lord, and surrounding yourself with people of faith and goodness. The deserts of Madden taught him patience. The hills whispered to him of wisdom, and the clear skies reminded him of Allah's constant presence. After spending many peaceful years in Maidan, working for his father-in-law, raising a family, and living a simple, content life, Musa has felt a pull in his heart. It was time to return. He missed his people. He wondered about his family in Egypt, and deep inside, he sensed that his journey wasn't finished yet. And so, with his wife and family, Musa has begun the long journey back toward Egypt. The desert at night is both beautiful and unforgiving. The wind whispered across the sand. The stars hung like tiny lanterns in a vast black sky, and the cold was sharp and biting as they traveled. Musa and his family lost their way. There was no road, no signpost, and the night stretched endlessly around them. They needed warmth, light, and direction. And just when it seemed hopeless, something appeared in the distance. Far ahead, on the side of a mountain called Mount Tor, Musa saw a flicker of light, a fire, but it wasn't like any ordinary fire. It shimmered strangely, almost calling to him. He turned to his family and said, "Stay here. I have seen a fire. Perhaps I can bring you a torch from it, or find guidance there." Quran 28, banding 29. And with cautious steps, Musa has made his way toward the mysterious glow. The climb was steep, and the night was silent. No birds, no wind, only the crunch of stones beneath his feet. As he drew closer, the light grew brighter, warmer, almost alive. And then the moment came. Suddenly, from the midst of the fire, a voice called out, "O Musa!" Musa as froze. His heart pounded. His breath caught again. The voice spoke calm yet mighty. "Indeed, I am your Lord. Remove your sandals. You are in a sacred valley of Tua." The voice wasn't harsh. It was gentle, powerful, and filled with mercy. It was Allah speaking directly to Musa. Yes, in that sacred moment, Allah said to Musa, "As I have chosen you, so listen to what is revealed." Then Allah gave Musa as his mission, "Go to Pharaoh. Indeed, he's transgressed. Speak to him gently. Perhaps he may be reminded or fear." Imagine being told to return to the very place you fled from to face the most powerful tyrant in the land. But Allah wasn't sending Musa as alone. To strengthen Musa's heart, Allah granted him two signs. First, he commanded Musa as to throw down his staff. And when he did, it transformed into a massive serpent slithering across the ground. Musa as turned in fear, but Allah reassured him, "Do not be afraid. Take it and it will return to its form." Second, Allah told Musa as to place his hand under his arm. When he withdrew it, it shone bright white, gleaming with light. another sign for Pharaoh and his people. Musa, as though brave, felt the weight of the task. He prayed, "My Lord, open for me my chest. Ease my task and untie the knot from my tongue, so that they may understand my speech and appoint for me a helper for my family." Harun, my brother, and Allah, in his kindness, granted his request, because even prophets need support. Even the strongest hearts need a companion. Musa, as wasn't the same man who had left Egypt years before. Back then he was running for his life. Now he was returning by the command of Allah, carrying the message of truth in his heart and miracles in his hands. At his side was his loyal brother Harun, as chosen by Allah to be Musa's helper and support. Two brothers, one mission, and the might of Pharaoh waiting ahead. As they approached Egypt, the familiar sights came into view: the towering statues, the bustling markets, the endless columns of slaves and soldiers. But this time, Musa didn't enter as a fugitive. He walked in as a messenger. And though the people whispered and stared, Musa moved with calm purpose. Eventually word reached Pharaoh that Musa had returned, and not just returned, but claiming to be a messenger from the Lord of the worlds. Pharaoh, proud and arrogant as ever, summoned Musa to his grand hall. The room was filled with advisors, soldiers, and towering idols. And on a grand golden throne sat Pharaoh, draped in silk, crowned in jewels. Musa and Harun stood before him, two simple men with hearts filled with faith. Pharaoh spoke first, his voice dripping with mockery. "Did we not raise you among us as a child? And you stayed with us for years of your life. And then you did that deed you did, and you were one of the ungrateful." Quran 26, Co 8-9. He was trying to remind Musa of the past, of his mistake, to shame him, to intimidate him. But Musa stayed calm. He acknowledged the past without fear, and then invited Pharaoh to something greater indeed. "I am a messenger from the Lord of the worlds, sent to you, so you may be guided." Pharaoh, as expected, scoffed. He laughed, with his ministers mocking Musa's claim. So Musa showed him the first miracle. He threw down his staff, and it transformed into a giant living serpent. The room gasped. Then Musa placed his hand under his arm, and when he drew it out, it shone with a brilliant, blinding light. These are clear signs, undeniable proofs, but arrogance is a heavy chain on the heart. Pharaoh, unwilling to lose face before his people, made a decision. He called for all the greatest magicians of Egypt. He promised them rewards and status if they could defeat Musa and expose him as a fraud. A day was set. The people of Egypt gathered in huge numbers. It wasn't just a contest. It was a show of power. Pharaoh believed he would humiliate Musa publicly. But little did he know this day would mark the beginning of his downfall. As the crowds gathered and the magicians prepared their ropes and staffs, ready to cast illusions, Musa felt a flicker of fear in his heart. He was human, after all. But Allah reassured him, "Do not be afraid. Indeed, it is you who will prevail." It was a beautiful reminder. Even the bravest hearts need comforting sometimes. And Allah, in His mercy, never lets His servants stand alone. The sun rose bright and high over Egypt that morning. People poured out of their homes. Merchants closed their stalls. Children sat on rooftops. Even Pharaoh himself sat eagerly on his grand seat. Word had spread fast. Musa, the former prince, the runaway fugitive, had returned and was about to face Egypt's greatest magicians. It wasn't just a contest. It was a spectacle. Pharaoh intended to humiliate Musa, as before thousands. But as always, Allah had other plans. One by one, the magician arrived. There were dozens of them, perhaps more, men with long robes, painted faces, and ropes coiled at their sides. Pharaoh promised them riches, status, and glory if they could defeat Musa. "As you'll be among the closest to me," he told them. And so they prepared, full of pride and excitement. They thought it was just another trick, just another day of illusions. They had no idea what was about to happen. The magicians turned to Musa and asked, "Will you throw first, or shall we be the first to throw?" Musa, as calm and confident, allowed them to go first. The crowd held its breath, and with a dramatic flourish, the magicians cast their ropes and staffs to the ground. In a flash, the ropes and sticks began to slither and twist like living snakes. To the eyes of the people, it was a terrifying sight. Children screamed. Men stepped back. Even Musa felt a quick flicker of fear. In that split second of human fear, Allah spoke directly to Musa's heart. "Do not be afraid. Indeed, you will be superior." Quran 20 hours 68 minutes. And with that calm reassurance, Musa stepped forward. Musa threw down his staff, and before the stunned eyes of Egypt, it transformed into a massive living serpent, far greater, far more real than anything the magicians had produced. It moved swiftly across the ground, swallowing the false ropes and staffs one after another. The magicians stared in disbelief. This was no trick, no clever movement of the hand. This was something divine. In that powerful moment, the magicians, the very men Pharaoh trusted to uphold his power, did something no one expected. They fell to their knees, their heads touching the ground, and with one voice they declared, "We believe in the Lord of Musa and Harun." Quran 20 hours 70 minutes. The entire crowd fell silent. Pharaoh's face darkened, his pride, his control, his plan shattered in seconds. Pharaoh, desperate and furious, tried to regain control. "How dare you believe in him before I give you permission?" He roared. He threatened them, promising punishment and death. But their hearts had already tasted truth. The magicians, once men of deception, had become believers in an instant, and nothing Pharaoh could say or do would change that. This moment was more than a contest. It was a reminder that truth doesn't need numbers. It doesn't need loud voices or grand palaces. It needs courage, sincerity, and trust in Allah. And when it arrives, even the hearts of those lost in darkness can recognize its light. After witnessing the magicians fall to their knees in faith, anyone with a heart would have paused, would have wondered, would have asked, could this really be the truth? But not Pharaoh. His pride was too heavy, his heart too hardened. He couldn't bear to lose control, to let his people follow Musa and Harun as. So instead of humbling himself, he did what tyrants often do. He tightened his grip. The people of Bani Israel, already poor and oppressed, found themselves in even deeper suffering. Pharaoh's soldiers increased their cruelty. The labor grew harsher. The punishments became severe. It was as though Pharaoh wanted to erase their hope, to make them forget the miracles they had witnessed. But you see, my friend, faith, once it enters a heart, is difficult to silence. Even as Pharaoh raged, Musa didn't stop. He would visit the people, remind them of Allah's promise, speak of patience, and assure them that the tyrant's power was temporary. Seek help through patience and prayer, he would say. And some hearts listened, some stood firm, but others, crushed by fear and exhaustion, complained. We were harmed before you came, Musa, and were harmed now. What has changed? And Musa, as with gentle patience, replied, Perhaps your Lord will destroy your enemy and make you successors in the land, and then see how you act. Quran 7:129, to break Pharaoh's arrogance and awaken the people. Allah sent signs, one after another, each one clear, each one undeniable. And each time Pharaoh would beg Musa to pray for relief, promising to let Bani Israel go. But every time, once the suffering lifted, Pharaoh would break his word. First came a severe drought. The crops dried, the rivers shrank, the people hungered. Then came the floods, sudden overwhelming rains that swept through homes and farms. Then locusts. They darkened the skies, devouring whatever crops remained. Next, lice. Tiny, relentless creatures that made life unbearable. After that, frogs leaping everywhere, in homes, food, beds, and clothes. And finally, blood. The rivers, the wells, even the stored water turned red and undrinkable. Each time a new plague arrived, the people rushed to Pharaoh. Ask your Lord to stop this, and we'll believe. We'll let them go. And so Pharaoh would send word to Musa, as with a sincere heart, Musa would pray, and Allah would lift the punishment. But Pharaoh's pride always returned. Why should I lower myself before him? These are just strange coincidences, he would claim. It was a tragic cycle. Through it all, Musa remained patient. He kept reminding his people, kept standing firm, kept praying to Allah. He knew that change doesn't always come swiftly, and sometimes the darkest nights come just before the dawn. After years of suffering, broken promises, and endless oppression, the people of Bani Israel were exhausted. But they clung to one thing, hope. Musa continued to visit them, reminding them of Allah's promise, urging them to be patient and telling them that a day would come when they'd be free. And then that day arrived. Allah revealed to Musa, take my servants by night and flee, for you will be pursued. Quran 26 minutes and 52 seconds. It was time, under the cover of night, when the city had fallen into silence and Pharaoh's men had gone to their beds. Musa gathered the people. They moved quietly through the narrow streets. Old men, mothers carrying children, young men carrying belongings. A nation moving in the shadows. No torches, no noise, just hurried footsteps and whispered prayers. Every heartbeat was loud in the darkness. Would Pharaoh's soldiers notice? Would they be stopped? But Allah had promised protection. Musa as led them eastward toward the Red Sea. They didn't have ships. They didn't know how they cross. But sometimes when you walk with trust in your heart, the road appears only when you take the first step. The night stretched on. The stars lit their path. And with every mile, hope grew. But Pharaoh wasn't done yet. When news reached Pharaoh that Bani Israel had escaped, his fury knew no bounds. He gathered his soldiers, his horses, his chariots. "How dare they leave without my permission?" he roared. And like a storm, his army sped into the night, chariots rattling, swords shining. A wave of fury chasing a tired, defenseless people as dawn approached. Bani Israel reached the shores of the Red Sea, and in the distance, dust rising, the sound of galloping hooves, the gleam of swords in the morning light. Panic spread among them. "Musa, look, they're coming. We're trapped. The sea in front of us and Pharaoh behind." Fear gripped their hearts. Some cried, some froze, some lost hope, but Musa as did not. In that terrifying moment, Musa as stood tall and calm. He raised his voice and declared, "No, indeed, my Lord is with me, and he will guide me." Quran 26 banding 62. It was a moment of perfect trust. When everything seemed lost, he knew it wasn't over, because when you walk with Allah, there's always a way. Then came the command. Allah instructed Musa, as strike the sea with your staff. And with a firm hand, Musa obeyed. The staff struck the water, and before their astonished eyes, the sea split. Walls of water rose on both sides. A dry, clear path appeared, stretching across the seabed. A miracle unlike anything the world had seen. Without hesitation, Musa has led the people into the open path. Step by step, they moved between towering walls of water. The sun rose higher, lighting their way, and behind them, Pharaoh's army arrived. Seeing the path, Pharaoh, driven by arrogance and rage, ordered his men to follow. Chariots and horses thundered down the seabed. As Bani Israel reached the other side safely, and Pharaoh's army charged deeper into the parted sea, Allah sent his final command. The waters collapsed. With a mighty roar, the sea returned to its natural state, swallowing Pharaoh and his soldiers. Not one of them escaped. Pharaoh, in his final moments, cried out, "I believe there is no God except the one in whom the children of Israel believe, and I am of the Muslims." Quran 10 hours and 90 minutes. But it was too late. His belief at the moment of death was not accepted. On the far shore, Bani Israel watched in awe. The oppressor was gone, the chains of fear broken, and a new chapter of freedom began. Tears of relief, prayers of gratitude, and the fresh morning breeze filled the air. They were free. For the first time in generations, the people of Bani Israel woke up free. No weeps, no forced labor, no soldiers shouting orders. They stood on the other side of the Red Sea, the sun rising over a land unknown, with nothing ahead but open sky and endless desert. It should have been a moment of pure joy, and it was for a while, but soon reality settled in. They had no homes, no fields to farm, no city walls for protection. The desert was vast and harsh. As the days passed, Hunger and thirst began to gnaw at them, and people, as people often do, started to complain. Musa, what will we eat? What will we drink? Was this escape only to die of hunger in the desert? Even after witnessing miracles, the plagues, the seas splitting, some hearts were quick to forget. But Musa has remained patient. He turned to Allah in prayer, and once again Allah answered. He sent down manna and solar sweet heavenly food and delicate birds, enough for everyone every day. And when they thirsted, Musa, as was commanded, to strike a rock with his staff. From it 12 springs gushed forth, one for each tribe. Clear, cool water in the heart of the dry land, a kindness beyond measure. But sadly, as time passed, some among Bani Israel grew ungrateful. They complained about the sameness of the food. We're tired of this. We want onions, garlic, herbs like we had in Egypt. Musa reminded them gently where they had come from. Would you exchange what is better for what is less? Quran, 2 hours, 61 minutes, but human. Hearts can be weak, and it's a reminder for all of us how quickly we forget blessings when we become comfortable. Then came another important moment. Allah called Musa as to mount her once again, this time to receive his sacred commandments, what would later be known as the Torah. Before leaving, Musa has appointed his brother Harun as to lead the people in his absence, guide them well, and do not follow the path of the corruptors, he advised. And then Musa has climbed the mountain, leaving his people at its base. Musa has spent 40 nights in devotion and conversation with his Lord. It was a sacred, peaceful time away from the noise of people, alone with the Creator of the heavens and the earth. During these nights, Allah revealed guidance, laws, and lessons meant to purify hearts and build a just society. But down below, without Musa's presence, trouble was brewing. Among Bani Israel was a man named Samri, a deceitful, clever man with a talent for his guiding hearts. Seeing an opportunity, Samari gathered gold from the people, jewelry they had taken from Egypt, and molded it into a golden calf. He spread whispers, "This is your God and the God of Musa." But Musa has forgotten it. And sadly, many among the people, weak in faith, believed him. They gathered around the idol, praising it, forgetting the very Lord who had split seas for them. It was a tragic moment of weakness. Harun as did his best to stop them. He warned them, pleaded with them, reminded them of all his miracles. But some threatened him, and many refused to listen. Harun as feared that forcing them would split the people. So he waited for Musa's return. It's a heavy burden to watch people stray and have to choose between peace and confrontation. After 40 nights in sacred conversation, with Allah, Musa as descended Mount Tura. In his hands were the stone tablets inscribed with divine guidance for his people. His heart was peaceful. He was ready to build a new righteous community. But as he approached the camp, the sounds weren't what he expected. Not the soft hum of prayer. Not the quiet murmur of people waiting for their prophet. No, there was music. There was shouting. And worst of all, there was idol worship. Musa as couldn't believe his eyes. There in the center of the camp stood the golden calf, a lifeless statue of glittering metal, and around it many of his people bowing, singing, and praising a thing their own hands had made. After everything they had seen, the sea split, Pharaoh destroyed manna and springs in the desert. And yet here they were, worshipping a golden statue. Musa, as was overwhelmed with sorrow and anger. In his fury, he cast down the stone tablets, not out of disrespect, but from the deep heartbreak of a leader watching his people betray their Lord. He then turned to his brother Harun, as what held you back when you saw them going astray? Why didn't you stop them? Harun, as explained, his heart heavy. O son of my mother, the people overpowered me. They nearly killed me. I fear they would split and fight if I forced them. So I waited for you. It was a brother's plea, and Musa as understood. Next, Musa as turned to the man behind the corruption. So he demanded an explanation, and Samari with arrogance replied, I saw what they did not see. I took a handful of dust from the messenger Gersh's footsteps and cast it into the calf. My soul tempted me. He admitted his deceit, believing himself clever, but unaware of the gravity of his sin. As punishment, Samari was banished, cursed to live alone, unable to touch or be touched, forever marked by his treachery. Musa as then destroyed the golden calf, melting it down and casting its remains into the sea. He reminded his people of their Lord's countless blessings, of the seas parted for them, the food sent from the sky, the springs that gushed from rocks. And he warned them, your true God is Allah. None is worthy of worship but him. Some wept, some repented, some hearts remain hard, but a lesson had been delivered. Despite their great sin, Allah in his endless mercy offered forgiveness. He commanded them to repent sincerely, to seek forgiveness, and to turn back to righteousness. And those who did found their Lord kind and accepting. It was a reminder for every heart. No matter how far you stray, the door of mercy is never closed, but you must return sincerely. Musa has retrieved the stone tablets and presented them to the people. Within them were laws of justice, commands for worship, and wisdom to guide their new society. They were instructed in honesty, charity, kindness to parents, and justice to all. The foundation for a community built not on power or gold, but on truth and compassion. And so it ended. Moses' journey concluded with justice that brought the pharaohs to their knees and a march of honor. We learned that patience and faith can turn even the most impassable waters into roads. This life is the story of those who did not remain silent in the face of oppression and who crossed deserts for the sake of truth. Take care of yourselves until we meet again on the next sacred journey.